It's been a long time coming, but I am finally reviewing The Little Mermaid 2023. I didn't really know how to feel after watching it for the first time because it definitely suffers from live action remake syndrome. If you know, you know. But when I was driving home, I felt kind of like elated, like happy. I don't know how to describe it, because when I watched the movie, my initial reaction was disliking it. But then I'm driving home and I'm listening to the soundtrack and I feel like happy. And I'm like, did I like this movie? There's something kind of special about seeing something that you really love being reimagined, I think. And this movie is far from perfect, but I think there are some things that they did really well and things that kind of elevated the story or the musical in a way. So this part of the review, I'm only going to be covering the things that I really enjoyed or I felt brought new life to the story, and not any of the bad things, of which there are many. I'll be covering all the bad stuff in the second part of my review, but I felt so divided about this movie. I thought it would be good to kind of separate my ideas and create one video in which I talk about the good things and another video in which I talk about the bad things. At this point, I have watched the movie twice. I watched it once in the theater as soon as it came out, and then I went home and I watched the original, and then I went back and watched it again just to get an idea of how I really felt. If you hated this movie and you want to see somebody completely rip it to shreds, this is not the part of the review for you. If you want to see my negative thoughts, you'll have to wait until the second part, because this video will only be covering the things that I actually enjoyed about the film. So here are 5 things that I think they did really, really well for a live action remake. Live action remakes are not my favorite genre. Are they even a genre? I don't know. I don't really like them, but I just feel like there are some undeniable things that this one did right, especially compared to other ones. The first thing they did right was cast Halle Bailey as Ariel. I don't know what the casting directors are thinking when they cast these movies. I know when they cast Belle in Beauty and the Beast, they thought, oh, Emma Watson looks bookish and she's smart. Like, Emma Watson looks like a Belle type, right? And she's a good actress. So they were like, okay, who cares if you can sing or not in this musical in which you are the lead? I'm not saying she can't sing, but do me a favor and go listen to Halle Bailey's Part of Your World.
Wish I could be.
And then go listen to Emma Watson's Belle.
I once adventure in the great white somewhere.
It's night and day. Like, you cannot deny the pure vocal talent that Halle Bailey possesses that Emma Watson does not. And I think Emma Watson, they kind of did her dirty. I've watched videos covering the process of making Beauty and the Beast, and it seems like they were like recording the songs live as the actors were singing them on set. And just the final product sounds like someone singing in a tin can at the bottom of the ocean or something. It just sounds really, really bad. Straight up, if Part of Your World sounded anything like Belle from the live action Beauty and the Beast, it would have ruined the whole movie. Halle Bailey, her vocals alone, for me personally, carry the whole film. And I was just so happy that they cast somebody who can sing. No shade to Emma Watson. Honestly, I think she's a better actress than Halle Bailey. So it's like give or take. However, with this movie in particular, because there's so much focus around Ariel's voice, you have to cast somebody with an amazing voice. And they did that. Thank God. The next thing I enjoyed about this movie was Prince Eric. We kind of get to know him a little bit more. We give him more of a background. The audience is able to sympathize with him more as a character. Jonah Hauer-King is very charming and cute. Halle Bailey and Jonah Bauer-King have really good chemistry as Ariel and Eric, I thought. I mean, it's not perfect, but for a remake, I thought it was pretty good. I will say, like, they kind of made Ariel and Eric a little bit too similar. Like, oh, Eric loves the sea and he loves sailing, and he loves his crew, and he loves the ocean. Like, he's fascinated by the ocean, like Ariel's fascinated by the human world, which is kind of cool. Like, they both have very strong interests that kind of overlap in a way, but they took it a little bit too far with the whole, like, his mom is oppressing him from sailing and Ariel's dad is oppressing her, and it's like a little bit too obvious. But overall, I was very happy that we got to see some backstory for Eric. I think it's well deserved, and that backstory translated into chemistry for Ariel and Eric, which I thought was really great. I also thought that Jonah Hauer-King was a very good cast, and yeah. The third thing I thought they did really, really well was how they translated Fathoms Below. I was kind of worried they were going to cut the number entirely, which would be disappointing because it's very fun, very, whimsical, whatever. And instead of cutting it, they just kind of moved it to a different spot. They placed Fathoms Below at the part where Ariel's kind of like peeking over the edge of Eric's ship, and she sees all of the men of the crew dancing and singing, and they're singing Fathoms Below. Below. Why do I keep saying below? Below. Fathoms Below? Yeah. Help me. They're singing Fathoms Below, and they kind of adapted it into this more like folksy sound, and Prince Eric is singing with the crew, and it's just really, really, really cute. I was so happy.
I'll tell you a tale of the bottomless blue.
I was very pleased to see Fathoms Below adapted in that way. I thought it was so perfect. It was such an appropriate and fun adaptation of the song. These are the kind of changes that need to be made in a real life adaptation. It was a good change instead of a bad change. Moving on to the fourth thing that I really, really loved about this movie, they added a song called For the First Time, which gives insight into Ariel's first experience being a human and how it's very exciting and overwhelming.
Look at me, suddenly I am on land and I'm free. Don't mind me as I climb for the first time.
In the original 1989 version, she kind of just loses her voice, and then we don't really hear from her again unless she's like, we see her emoting, like crying or smiling, but we don't really hear from her at all. I thought it was just such a good idea to add a song describing Ariel's experience and her excitement, and then, of course, her disappointment when Eric doesn't recognize her. I just felt very grounded with her character, and I felt very connected with Halle Bailey as Ariel in that moment. Like, watching that for the first time, I was like, okay, like she's Ariel, In the rest of the film, she's just singing songs that have already been sung a million times, but now here she is bringing something new to like a very beloved story. I felt not only more connected to Ariel as a character, but just like more connected to the story in general. And again, like, this is kind of what I'm looking for when I'm watching a remake. It's like, yeah, like, give us something new, give us something more, and this number does that like perfectly. So the fifth and final thing on my list, which this is also my very favorite part of the entire film, was the Part of Your World reprise. Reprise? Is it reprise or reprise? Reprise? I'm gonna say reprise. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but they wrote another reprise for Part of Your World. So it's called Part of Your World Reprise. I'm going to say Reprise, actually. They call it Part of Your World Reprise 2. It's the same Part of Your World tune, but they wrote new lyrics to it. It just describes Ariel's like total devastation when she finds out the prince is marrying Vanessa.
Risking it all, only to fall back where I started.
It was so well performed and so appropriate and perfect. Again, it's giving us a chance to hear Ariel's inner voice because she's not speaking at this point in the story. That moment was my favorite part of the film. I'll get more into this with my negative stuff about the movie, but in this moment, everything blended perfectly. Like, Ariel's like sitting on a rock in some water on the shoreline, and you see the castle, and then Sebastian and Flounder are coming out of the water, and everything just kind of looks cohesive for a moment because the rest of it isn't exactly cohesive all the time. So it was gorgeous. I was like, okay, this is good. Because the rest of the time, everything looks a little bit jumbled. But in this moment, it all feels like it's in the same world and it's all being tied together with all the CGI and everything. I wish the whole movie was like that. Also, I think the Reprise #2 kind of like ties it back to the original Hans Christian Andersen tale as well. I don't know the story that well, but from what I can remember, the mermaid's in love with a prince. She goes onto land. After she makes a deal with the witch, her voice or her tongue gets cut out, whatever. She's with the prince, and the prince ends up marrying somebody else, and she just like dies and turns into sea foam. And so for me, like hearing Ariel be so distraught about Prince Eric marrying somebody else, it kind of like reminded me of that original story.
What did I give to live where you are?
This moment for me anyway, like tied it back to the original source material beyond the 1989 cartoon. Again, it's like connecting more to Ariel, connecting more to the story. Everything looked good for once. But yeah, those are my top 5 moments of this movie. Unfortunately, my dislikes is a little bit longer. If you want to hear my full review, we'll have to wait for the second part. I do have some honorable mentions. In this version of Under the Sea, they have Ariel actually join Sebastian while he's singing the song, and I thought that was really adorable and just like a nice little touch. Jodie Benson has a really cute cameo. I really enjoyed that. I wasn't expecting it at all. I was like, oh my god, that's Jodie Benson? Yeah, that's pretty much it for the first half of my review. My next half is going to be very different. Yeah, really different. Basically, I'm pretty much very happy with all of the musical additions they added to this film. Almost all of them anyway.
Remember the swamp? Remember my song in the swamp when I was like, wham, take a wham, wham.
But of course, there are things that I did not enjoy, as I've been hinting this whole time, and I'm going to be saving those for the second half of my review. If you would like to watch that as well, please subscribe so that you know when it's happening, right? Or not. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys in the next half of my review. But until then, bye! Boop, 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 boop. There's something kind of special seeing, or no. But yeah, basically, the next thing that I think that I also thought Jonah Howard King. I don't remember. What was I saying? I don't remember. I felt I really liked dear God, help me. What's that? Why is it hot? Sea, under the sea.